Hi everyone. In this video I want to go through how we can redefine alloy tags. It's a really simple example to show you how you can really improve your cross-platform code by reducing the amount of code you write, but allow your application to work on different platforms like iOS and Android more easily. So here's a really simple example of a tasks app that I'm doing. It was done for a demo and for a talk that I did recently. It's very simple at the moment. You can add items, you can tick items off, but eventually I want to have the ability to be able to maybe click on a task and it will open a sub window, and I could then add some notes or do some other things to that task, maybe set a due date and stuff like that. And to do that, I'm going to need to use either a tab group or a navigation window typically. So one of the techniques you can use is making sure that that is going to work properly on iOS and Android. So let's look at the code. So you can see that my index file here, we've got navigation window, I've got my window inside, I've got some text fields and my table collection, my table view and things like this. It's a really, really simple example. There's not much code in this app at all. So one of the things you can see there is my navigation window. Now typically that's going to be an iOS only function, an iOS only object. If I try and run this in Android, it's going to crash because navigation window doesn't exist. So ordinarily what you might do is you might tie this to iOS by saying platform equals iOS, and then it's only going to render that on iOS. Now, of course, when it comes to running on Windows or anything else, this view effectively is going to be empty. It's not going to know what else to do. So you have to give it another option. So typically what you might say is, okay, I'm going to copy the window code down here. I'm going to set this to platform equals Android. I'm only using Android and iOS in this example. And now on Android, it's going to render out the window. On iOS, it's going to render the navigation window and the window inside. And because the controller code is the same, everything's going to work fine. The issue here is that I've just copied a huge block of code and duplicated it. So it's really easy to get into a mess now with duplication of code. So we don't want to do that. So one of the other options we could do is we could move that window into an external file, and we could use the require tag to say that we want to bring in that window, and then we could set that to platform equals Android. We could move that up to here and remove the tag. And now we've effectively achieved the same thing, but we've only got one set of code, which is our home screen or our home list. The problem here is that I'm having to use the require function, the require tag. I'm having to potentially move code that would normally have been in this screen into that sub window and then have triggers and all kinds of things going on. It doesn't feel as clean as it could be. So one of the things that we can do here, if we just go back to our original code, is we can override the navigation window tag. So let's get rid of that. Let's get back to where we were. So with Alloy, the way it works is that when you add a tag called navigation window or view or table view, all that's happening in the background is Alloy is pre-processing these files into classic titanium code. It's using ti.ue.createWindow, ti.ue.createView. It's just setting all that up for you. It's making it's doing the hard work for you, and it's just allowing you to lay out your screens more easily. So one of the techniques that you can use with Alloy is you can override the functions. You can create your own custom functions. You can even create your own custom tags, but that's for another video. So one of the things I can do here is I can specify an attribute called module. And I have a file called ue.js, which you can see on the left here, if I just bring that up. And inside that file, that's in my lib folder within the app folder. So it's ab/lib/ue.js. And when you're specifying it in the module, you don't need to put the JS extension. So in there, we've got a function being exported called create navigation window, which matches, apart from the create at the front, the navigation window tag. So what Alloy's doing now is it's going to look inside this module for a function called create navigation window. If it's not there, it's going to fail, and it's going to fall back to the normal navigation window. But in this case, it's found a function that I've created called navigation window, and what I'm then doing is taking the arguments that are passed through, I'm checking if it's on iOS, I'm returning a normal navigation window. So for iOS, there's no difference. But for Android, I'm just returning the default window that was specified, which is defaults to this one here. So what Android gets is this, and what iOS gets is this. Both platforms will now run the app and will work fine. Now, of course, this isn't perfect. I'm effectively giving back a window when it's expecting a navigation window. So if you were to call the let's say we've got a controller that's doing window.navWindow.open window, it's going to fail because a window doesn't have that particular method. So of course you can use other techniques. You can define an object in here that has all those custom methods. And that would be the correct way of doing this. But this is a quick way to get something working that you can make sure that it's working in iOS and Android. So if I just pop up an example here, this is a library that was done by Foke, where he created something called xp.ue.js. And in his example here, what he's doing is he's creating a full-blown navigation window object, and he's adding all of those methods for open, close, open window. So what Android gets is a navigation window back that it has the same signature. So if your code elsewhere in the app is using the .open window to open a new sub-window, it's going to continue to work, and it's going to use that on Android, and it's going to open a new window instead. So you can still have that same code signature in the rest of your app. But it's just a really quick example of how you can do alloy overrides to just change the way that tag behaves. And you can do the same thing with things like labels. Let's say you always want labels to be defaulting to black, or you want some sort of attribute that always takes place in a window when you create it by default. Well, of course, you could put that in app.tss. You could put it in your index.tss. But another technique you can use here is exports create label. Give it some arguments. There's just the normal arguments that will be passed through. Now here what I could say is, okay, args.color equals args.color, or it's black. So if it's not specified, it's going to default to black, and then we're going to return ti.ue, create label, args, and we're done. I've added the tag already here for module.ue. So what's going to happen now is when I create the label, it's going to take the arguments that are passed through. It's going to check whether there's a color value already. If it is, it's going to use it. Otherwise, it's going to specify black, and then it's going to return it. Let's just put my semicolon in. It's going to return that new label with those arguments. So I've now ensured that all my labels default to black. Now, yeah, you could do that in app.tss. You could do that in your TSS. It's perfectly fine to do that. This is just a very, very quick example of what you can do. But it opens up all kinds of possibilities. You could create completely custom tags. There's a project that I had to do where I had to do a checkbox. So I created a checkbox tag. I specify the module going to my UE. And in here, all I've got to do, again, is create the function. And now in here, I can specify all of my titanium code, maybe creating the view, creating the borders, all in classic code that's going to return a checkbox. So it allows you to do really, really cool things that you can then make sure work with iOS and Android, or that just enhance existing tags to add more features to them that you might need. I hope that was really helpful. Thanks for watching.